Welcome back, New World Fantasy Football, episode 10. We are joined here by our good friend and fantasy analyst, so we say, Jeremy Rodriguez, who's also a Giants fan.
Don't forget the A. Jeremy
A. Rodriguez. And he's also the commissioner of one of our most coveted leagues. So, Jeremy,
Allegedly.
go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, man.
Hey, my name is Jeremy. I am a state licensed realtor and owner of Real Deal Real Estate in the state of Arizona. So if I say something naughty, please recognize that I'm a human who loves football, and football brings out the best and the worst of us. So let's have some fun.
So yeah, don't cancel him yet, please. He just had a child and he needs the money. So,
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Gotta save up for that.
And you already know Paul, and there's not really much to be said about him. So
he's lined up today.
Yeah, we're kind of ganging up on Paul a little bit, being Giants fans and just loving him since middle school. So yeah, man, what do you guys think right off the top of your head?
Well, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I've actually been a big fan for many years. I know the podcast hasn't been in circulation for many years, but hearing you guys bicker like an old couple for over a decade has definitely steeled me for this moment. So
it all started with a
I'm quite excited.
Slushy down Paul's back about 20 years ago.
It was the front.
That's really romantic. That's romantic.
Yeah, free slushy day was not good for you.
We're not going to get into that story. It's
no, that's okay. What do y'all think, though? Okay, so this draft just happened. Everyone's excited. Everyone's abuzz about their teams, or they're pissed off at their GMs. Personally, I'm happy, but worst draft. What do you think, Jeremy?
I mean, the low-hanging fruit is probably going to be Detroit, even though at the end of the day, I if we scrambled their picks a little bit, I feel like most people would be okay with how it went down, right? Like if you switch Brian Branch with Jack Campbell, people would be like, oh yeah, Brian Branch, he's a real good football player, you know? If I had to really think that there was a team that fumbled the bag a little bit, I think it would be the Bears. They were in a position, they had the number one pick, and then still came out of it with probably the number 3 or 4 offensive linemen on many people's draft boards, if you want to break it down that way. And it's hard to be critical. It's not like I can say like I'm a hog molly film grinder like our boy Dave Gettleman, but it definitely kind of seems like there was a better opportunity there. Whereas I know you asked me for the worst, but like juxtaposed to what the Cardinals did, like the Cardinals moved all over the board and said like, try to stop me, and still have accumulated a war chest to prepare them for potentially the Caleb Williams lottery next year. If they don't like what they see with Kyler. So it honestly, one of the most exciting drafts I can remember. I mean, like you got the Texans playing Madden out here.
Yes.
Like that. I thought that was so cool. Like honestly, like as a Madden player with a franchise that like is just so bastardized with like just a roster full of first round picks and like over the salary cap every season. That's what it felt like to me. It was just like the Texans just being like, moving assets for like 2 of the top 3 players in the draft because they were looking for some hidden depth.
I definitely have the Texans as one of my top 3 drafts because, when you got balls and you just go for it, I like that. And you say you've got a cornerstone piece. If CJ Stroud really is the guy going forward for them for a long time, and then you have a cornerstone piece on defense, well, you just reset your franchise pretty good there. So things have to go right for them, but hey, I like it. Go big or go home. So
who else was bad? I mean, not to interrupt you. Rams also low-hanging fruit. I mean, like their first pick off the board is Tank Dell, and it's like he's a better player than Tutu Atwell, but it's like, okay, like this, we're gonna play this game every time. Like you have like one pick in the top 100, and it's like I'm gonna grab the undersized like playmaker. But anyway,
and then Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, which I mean, whatever.
Why so early?
Quarterback depth, but yeah, I mean, it's. It's like, do I want to wait for like the end of round 3 QB run that happens every time, or and then my last note probably on this short list here, because I took notes like on almost every single team, but I'm trying to like think like who is the worst. Probably the Raiders, just because like they don't have like a QB of note outside of Jimmy Garoppolo, and the only offensive weapon they added to that room was Michael Mayer, who I thought was a great value where they got him. But that's, I mean, I guess like that's like the hubris of their coach. He's like, oh, I can scheme an offense around like Jimmy G. But I mean, you saw like the success that Shanahan was able to have with Jimmy G when he like surrounded him with a war chest of weapons, and that's not the circumstance with the Raiders right now with the aging Devontae Adams. So
For sure, I feel you on that one. What do you think, Paul? Who, if you had to pick your worst draft, who would it be?
So, Jeremy said the words low-hanging fruit earlier. Sometimes low-hanging fruit is low-hanging for a reason. It's obvious Detroit was the worst draft.
Low-hanging fruit is the reason my gene pool still exists.
Got him.
Yeah, we're not going to survive if the tree is 6 feet tall and we're 5 foot pygmies. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, I don't think none of us here are cracking 6 feet. So, spoiler alert.
Yeah, no, I do not, in fact, have a hog longer than my body. Yeah, Detroit, I think it was a terrible draft because, like, okay, I get it. There's maybe questions about DeAndre Swift's health, or like maybe he didn't mesh with the team, whatever. I don't know about that, man. But like, it felt like you used a draft where you should have been in a huge position of power with 2 picks early, and basically shored up positions you didn't technically need. Your run game was fine the way it was. Like, basically revamped the entire run in Dan Campbell's image, and you used, your basically your first round capital to do that. I'm not into it. I'm sure Jahmyr Gibbs will be a fine player. I don't have a problem with him as a prospect. I just think it's way too early and didn't address the needs they had. So that's number one worst. And kind of like honorable mention worst draft is Atlanta for virtually the same reasons. Yeah, Bijan, everybody keeps throwing this word generational around. I hope it's true this time. That would be pretty awesome. But
Whoa! Was that a shot at Saquon?
They didn't address them that they needed to address.
You better fucking relax, son. It's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah, the Bijan pick is not modern NFL, but if a guy is that good and if they just want to run the ball all day like they did last year, even with like average to below average running backs, I can see why they made that pick. But I mean, I just don't really like the way Atlanta does things. I just don't. So, but they're on one of my they made my top 3 for worst drafts as well.
Oh, did I say best yet, or have we not done that yet?
You go for it. What do you think's the best?
He's new here. It's his first day.
Yeah, I mean, it's thank you for having me on, Jeremy.
Sometimes some people have never had a 3-way.
So I think it's, and I hate to say this in a room that's probably going to be an unpopular take, but it's got to be Philly, especially with the downstream trade that happened after the draft. They shored up an already awesome defensive line and daddied Detroit basically to address the only position that they really truly lost in the offseason, at least from a starting perspective, right? I'm sure they need depth everywhere. I stopped short of saying Houston has the best draft. In technicality, if we only took just only the ramifications of only this draft and who had the best draft, I think by default it's Houston. You had 2 of the top 3 picks and picked pretty chalky players at those top 3 picks. So I think that if we took it in a vacuum, I think Houston had the best draft. But because of what you had to give up next year and down the road to get that best draft, I'm going to give it to Philly because they didn't really have to give much up.
Yeah, I I can't argue with Philly. You know, they just keep reloading and reloading. They're like that. They've got like the gunner guy next to them with the big ass gun, and he's just like, he just keeps feeding them bullets. Like, why does every other team just keep feeding them more and more friggin' bullets to shoot right at Daniel Jones's face? It really sucks to be in that division.
Not if John Michael Schmitz has anything to say about it.
Oh yeah, we put up a white picket fence and they got friggin' bazookas aimed at. Jesus, man. Yeah, I have to say, yeah. And I actually low key like the other Pennsylvania draft with the Steelers. I think they did a great job. I just like what they did.
Was the chalkiest of all picks to them.
What's that? Joey Porter?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised he lasted. I thought it was a good chance Giants would take him.
Yeah, I thought
after that trade up.
But not with Banks on the board, honestly. I mean, it's so weird. It's like rare. I mean, you got to be careful what you wish for too. But it's so rare that like I'll watch a draft and be like, I want that guy. Like he fits the scheme. Like he's hyper athletic. Like the bottleneck on that dude is like never going to be his athleticism. You know, it's going to be like his technique. It's going to be his anticipation, like all things that could be coached up. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm about to go on a Giants tangent, so I'm just going to step back.
Well,
but I will say on your comments on the Texans was or on the Eagles rather, because I agree they had one of the best drafts. I don't know if I like the move up to trade a third next year to grab Keely Ringo. I don't know. I mean, that dude can be like a beefed up like box safety maybe, but his anticipation in coverage is like pretty bad. Like he often looks kind of lost in that sense. Yeah. So I guess that if you were going to like be critical about something, I mean, it still was an A+ like smash draft, but you know, I gotta like call him out on something. You know, it's in the same sense. Like I love the Giants draft, and it's like someone can complain about you know, moving assets to get your guys, but it's like, yeah, I mean, like you got really good players. So like, what's the point of having one more like rotational safety, you know, and like a so-so prospect that like might develop to a starter versus like having like the dog you were looking for, you know? So
and that was the argument that people made for the Texans is, well, they traded up and they gave up assets to go and grab Will Anderson, but it's like, get the one stud. He's going to be more valuable than the two like average starters, maybe, or maybe you get one starter and one depth player or whatever it ends up being. Just get the friggin' stud on your team. You need it.
I think that trade is fine if CJ helps Houston win more than 4 or 5 games. If they end up with 5 or less wins next year, which I still think is definitely a possibility.
They have nothing.
I think that trade's really going to hurt.
They have nothing in terms of offensive talent on that team. It is a very dry pantry for that young man to step into.
You know, he's going to walk in and be like, I've been at Ohio State for multiple years. Like, where's these nasty receivers? Where are they? The Will Smith in the empty room thing.
Which for a fantasy perspective, I think means his rushing floor is going to be higher than we expect, because remember that was a big knock on his analysis from college was that, oh, hey, like he's a pure passer. We needed to see something. Oh, and then like he like created one game and they're like, oh man, like he's like that dude. And it's like, well, we might see that. We might see that more.
It's also tendencies and like the team around you and how it's coached and how that offensive system is structured. Like, listen, if I'm playing quarterback and I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and JSN and whatever, these guys on the other side, I know he didn't play much last season, but you've got these studs all over the place. Like me running is not as valuable as getting them the ball. But if I've got like you guys playing my receiver, I might want to run the ball more often. You know what I mean? It's just what's more valuable every play.
Almost separator in the slaughter, right?
Yeah, like every other player who came out this year. He's a slot only guy.
Hey, Orlando is the flag football capital of the world, and we got some ships out of that city. So
you helped make it a fantasy or a flag football.
Hey, Brandon Marshall is a pretty good receiver. So
Well, maybe. So you guys said you didn't want to get on a Giants tangent. Maybe you should get on a Giants tangent.
Okay,
How
sure.
do you all feel about the
Christmas
draft?
came early. I'm happy. I'm happy. And Jalen Hyatt, what a value. So excited for him. Finally got ourselves somebody in the interior who isn't just a pile of jello just going to get pushed over. So yeah, I'm excited, but I digress to Jeremy.
Well, I mean, obviously when you can get a top tier athleticism, a defensive back, it's a premium position, outside boundary corner, has all the length you're looking for, but that's not necessarily exciting from like a fantasy perspective. So I think Jalen Hyatt was a victim of his own success at Tennessee. He is a better prospect than he gets credit for. I suppose, a bit of a red flag was when he didn't run as quickly in the 40 during the combine as was expecting. But like tight hamstring, whatever. He still had a great vertical, clearly a good athlete, maybe not as much suddenness like coming out of his like cuts, but like when they're not asking you to do much else besides be the fastest dude on the field and catch a long touchdown, like what are you going to do? Say no? That's got to be like the best feeling in the world, splitting a safety and a cornerback and taking it to the house 5 times against one of the best programs to ever exist in any sport.
How many times did he burn Ringo?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's what I'm saying, like 5 touchdowns in that Alabama game. So, whatever. It's more than just one game, though. The guy is a really good athlete, and if he develops that route tree, through coaching, I think he can have an impact. And in fact, I think he can have an impact a lot quicker than we think. I mean, the Giants just changed their AstroTurf field, but I'm not going to rule out the potential for soft tissue injuries to linger. In fact, a lot of the pieces that we signed this offseason are oft injured. In a player you're familiar with, Paul, and Paris Campbell, who always loved his athletic profile, former second-round pick out of Ohio State, but he just really couldn't stay healthy. But yet last year finally put it together, had his healthiest campaign. And, I'm looking forward to his addition to that wide receiver room, and I think he can have an impact, and I think he could surprise people with how good he is, especially with Daniel Jones now getting a little bit more protection, having more separators, and being able to throw with more anticipation. So I love adding Jalen Hyatt there, and then we'll see how Wandale comes back in terms of health. But we also have, what's his name, that former Jet that joined the wide receiver room.
Jeff Smith?
No, the slot receiver guy. I mean, he's been relevant before. He was like a target.
Oh, Jamison Crowder.
So it's like, so we have like a room kind of full of like dudes who've like been there and done that. So like Jalen really has an opportunity to be that young player to step on the field with all the juice, suck up all this crafty knowledge from these guys who've been able to stick on rosters all these years and have potentially a big splash. Now, is he a guy who I'm like, gonna, like expect like a big breakout rookie year for? No, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had like, a Darius Slayton type season from last year where it's like he comes out and has like 600 yards and like 7 touchdowns. I mean, that would, I think, exceed everyone's expectations. And still sticking with New York Giants, like fantasy impact, Saquon hasn't signed his tag yet, so we'll see with that Eric Gray draft pick they had, who I think is a good prospect, good wiggle, lacks like, that speed upside to take it to the house, like at the next level, but he will be a good back to keep Saquon healthy, bring his volume down, but perhaps increase his efficiency, especially with John Michael Schmitz now, a mature 24-year-old prospect, on most boards, number 1 center in the draft, even though Joe Tittman went to the Jets just a few picks previous. And I think Saquon would be poised for a big year should they come to terms, which is its own case study in and of itself, because, rumor was he got, an offer for, a little over $12 million per year last year. And then once Daniel Jones signed and in preparation for the draft, his offer was rescinded, which is not something you hear a GM just put into the ether every day. But he was pretty honest about it. He was just like, no, like we got nothing on the table right now. He's got his franchise tag. He hasn't signed it. He's not able to come to the facilities. We all know how I feel about him. We're focusing on the draft. And then in their introductory press conference for the class, when asked about Saquon again, he was like, yeah, we spoke this week. So you just never know like how icy things are looking. But I think, the needle is pointing up for the Giants in terms of having consistent fantasy output from their starters. Albeit, and like, man, we got a fucking Shark Tank of a division. I mean, like between Philadelphia, Cowgirls, as much as like I dislike them, I mean, like Micah Parsons is a dangerous man. In the locker room potentially too.
They're actually always a good team. I think that's what people forget. People paint the Cowboys as like super being like overhyped and overvalued. I don't think that's true. I don't think that they've performed in the playoffs, so people devalue them. But they're a good team every year and a problem in the division.
Yeah.
Their bottleneck is Mike McCarthy.
Yeah. And they match up well against our Giants. That's the unfortunate thing too. So, well, Jeremy, I agree with you, man. And I do think in terms of fantasy, Hyatt's going to have a few games. He's just going to be hard to predict year one. So, but we have a lot to look forward to as Giants fans. I know that. But so let's just talk about other fantasy impact players for the draft. I want to just get one guy out there.
I don't get to talk about my favorite teams. No, I'm just kidding.
You can. Can I just say that
I like the Colts draft too.
The best pick for fantasy for probably the next 20 years is the 49ers going with the kicker, Jake Moody, in the 3rd round. Pick him up, put him on your dynasty teams. It's going to be a beast. But yeah, man. So go ahead, Paul. Talk about your favorite stuff.
So yeah, I won't spend a lot of time here, I promise, because I don't think that there's much from a fantasy slant perspective that hasn't already been covered ad nauseum. I will ask one quick question from the Giants boys. If I'm going into this next year's fantasy draft, I don't think there's going to be 2 Giants receivers to draft. Who is the one that people should be targeting?
Darren Waller, if you want to consider that a receiver.
Let's say hypothetically that we are in a non-tight end league. Who would it be?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. It's hard to answer. Gosh, I'm inclined to say
who's the lowest on ADP.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah,
crazy.
Wandale,
I think
the experience with Daniel.
Wandale's a quick separator. I mean, if you have him in the slot, it's like easy money. Just like
7-8 catches a game.
Yeah, and then once the offensive line congeals, I mean, we'll just have to see how many targets there are to honestly, because like I think Brian Dabble and Kafka are going to be able to scheme these guys up, and like people are going to have an impact. But the thing is, like, it was very much like wide receiver by committee last season. I mean, like, who's to say Isaiah Hodgins doesn't become that every like series chain mover, and then like the number 2 guy in the red zone, which would lead to like 1,100 yards and like 8 touchdowns. That's very fantasy relevant. Now you're not drafting him in the first like 7 rounds of your draft, like not even close, but there's value there. So it's just, honestly, I would target whoever is like the lowest on ADP and then see where that dart falls. Cause like, Lord knows, you, Paul, and whoever else in our league are going to be dropping the like whatever Giants receiver they drafted within the first 3 weeks because they don't have the patience. They're not watching every game.
I feel like if they're going to be like all in between in the 8th and 10th round in fantasy drafts, just clustered. Like, which one do you like the most? It's hard to say. It's a bit of a convoluted.
But somebody has to provide some value. Position. I mean, wide receivers, like especially in our league, with how many you have to start, like. You need somebody. You need somebody on your bench. So
if you have the patience, you can draft Jalen Hyatt and maybe come week 5 or 6, you can start seeing some consistency from him.
For-
That
for
would be my hope.
context- For context, for the millions of listeners out there, our league has a wide receiver / tight end slot. So you're not married to the tight end position. So if you have a really good tight end, then great. But you are kind of like bootstrapped if you end up with like 2 good tight ends, which I think we've all kind of been there before. I mean, you actually won a championship, Marchese, because I had to make a choice between Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce for roster constraint during like bye weeks, and I dropped Mark Andrews during
the only
his
year,
like monster campaign.
Yeah, the only year Mark Andrews will ever be above Kelce, that just happened to be my lucky pickup. But so I mean, quarterbacks. Paul, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I was going to kind of continue because I had that was like the first part of my thing was that question, and I'm gonna briefly touch on Tampa and Indy, and then we'll kind of go into like just general fantasy.
We're gonna go into Indy, don't you worry, because we're going in Indy, and you know why. But go ahead.
So really outside of AR-15, and I'll take a 10-second victory lap on that one, because even though I think, did you have Levis to us?
Yeah, I'm terrible at analyzing the draft. So yes,
dude, everybody is. I don't even care to go into my shit. I know it was wrong. It's fine, but I felt really strongly about that because Ballard is a traits guy. He's super traitsy. You'll see that.
Look at the entire Colts draft.
All of his draft, like give me all the traits.
Sure, makes sense.
So
as long as your coach isn't Jeff Saturday, it makes sense.
Oh my God.
As long as you're not biting kneecaps.
Don't get me started on that. They had much of the same energy, honestly, when they spoke. Outside of that, not really much to talk about from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, you know how this changes the offense, right? So Richardson is a consideration, maybe because of his rushing ability. We know that his passing ability is kind of raw. I don't think he's going to sit very much at all. Maybe Minshew takes a few games, but from everything that I'm listening to and like different, indie podcasts and whatever from the different sports writers, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of appetite for a wait and see approach. The dude only played like 13 games in college. He's just going to have to get his lumps in the NFL and get experience that way. So get ready for some potentially very bad football. That being said, I do think there's going to be fantasy value to be had. Andrew talked about how this helps JT because, of course, somebody with that kind of running ability, we see how it works with Hurts, with Lamar, with all these other guys. You've seen the formula. You have to spy those guys, which just gives a running back a little bit more of a window and room. Some cooked-ass running backs have put up some 100-yard games specifically because of that. And JT is far from cooked. He was dealing with some nicks and bruises and stuff last year.
Colts just had a disaster season too.
Oh my God!
I don't chalk it up to that.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, really not much else. They picked up a slot on, I think, the back end of day 2 or day 3. I don't honestly remember.
They drafted Josh Downs, who I think is a really good Wan'Dale Robinson comp, actually. Quick separator, and I think he'll actually surprise you with how effective he'll be in the red zone because, the dude, he's a baller, man.
I like what I heard about him.
I like Josh Downs. I thought he'd go sooner than he did.
Yeah. I mean, he was being talked about as a potential pickup for the Giants, but I felt like it was a little bit redundant of an asset respectively because he's about the same size, 5'9", and he's got the quicks. But dude, that's a really good addition. I mean, because
I like their draft.
Yeah, I mean, you have Isaiah McKenzie in the slot
picked up
now.
that local kid, the DB. I thought that was pretty cool. Honestly, this guy, he's Isaiah McKenzie insurance. Because McKenzie's been a little kind of up and down as a veteran. But they need somebody in the middle of the field to give him hopefully some easy throws. And if we're drafting receivers out of that team, I am a card holding member of the Alec Pierce fan club, even though he didn't have much production last year. I don't think that was his fault. I really like him a lot.
He's got a lot of juice, man. He's got a lot of speed.
Still for this season, I think it's Pittman and not much else. He's going to need a guy that's got the size, and they're both good size, but Pittman just plays with his body a little more. And he's going to need somebody that's going to be able to win some contested catches. And there's honestly not going to be a lot of passes to go around transparently. Tampa, again, not much from a fantasy perspective that's super fun to talk about here, except the only thing with Tampa for me is they signaled, I think, what the world kind of already knew, but they put it on blast out there. Bowles is putting his stamp on this team. This is not Bruce Arians' team anymore. This is his style of team. We are in for a whole lot of running. He drafted a Ryan Jensen clone for that purpose. I think Wirfs is going to move to the left side. They've been working on that stuff with him. He's at least going to take some snaps from the left side because we don't have a true great left tackle, unfortunately. He is clearly the most talented lineman that we have, and we're just going to use his traits in that sense. He's unbelievably strong, so I think he can make the transition. So I think you're going to see a lot of Rashad White. I like White a lot this year.
Yeah, and I think the best thing that the Bucks did was take a guy that looks like a pirate. Because he's got no friggin' teeth.
All the memes are hilarious. It's just like the guy with like the new shirt wearing that shirt. That's the memes they've been putting out there about Ryan Jensen and gosh, why is his
Cody
name?
Mock.
Yeah, Cody Mock. Yeah.
Yeah. So we touched on it a little bit, and I want to get your opinion, Jeremy, because you have been an opposition to me when it comes to Mr. Anthony Richardson. Now, him being, I want to talk about all the quarterbacks for fantasy impact, but since we already mentioned his name,
we've dumped on him a lot. We need some good vibes here.
Yeah.
The best receiver Anthony Richardson has ever played with was Kadarius Toney.
True. He's not a very good receiver.
And I'm not sure like they had many snaps together because of how many games Anthony's like played.
Probably
you know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm not sure if he had any starts with KT as like his guy. So it's like he's had a poor surrounding cast. You've seen him like make really incredible plays when he's like being creative. Sure, like there's refinement that his game needs, but like I will always stand by athleticism mattering in athletics, because like sure we can make fun of like the vertical jump being hyped up, but like when you're on the 5-yard line and you fake a handoff to JT, this dude can literally jump from the 5-yard line over the offensive line into the end zone, and I think you're gonna like that as an Anthony Richardson owner in fantasy. Not to mention he's got wide receivers that have large catch radiuses now in Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman. I think he's got a really good surrounding cast. You have quick separators, so he won't necessarily need to see the throw the way like someone like Bryce Young can, where he's like a Jedi, like just put it on a rope where the receiver's gonna be, without him being there. So some quarterbacks just need a little bit of help. He's going to need his reps. I mean, think about how much hate Jalen Hurts was getting. He was being compared to Lamar Jackson in his first few starts, and now he's one of the best anticipatory throwers in the league. I mean, he was in the MVP conversation. So, sure, I'm not expecting Richardson to come out the gate and just like be like melting faces, but I think he's going to make an impact. I mean, I'm definitely not going to be drafting him. He definitely seems like a waiver wire pickup. Because I think Minshew might win too much. I don't think the Colts want to win this year. I don't know. You can let me know what's gonna happen, because again, like I like their draft, but they drafted a lot of high upside developmental prospects, and like their window is like
Ballard
shrinking,
always does that.
But
he always does that.
It's just, I mean, and I think Ballard does great job. He just does a really bad job at evaluating veteran quarterbacks. But maybe with this young traitsy quarterback, like
he just works for a team whose owner is
impatient as hell.
Well, impatient, but also like there's not that many teams. I think the Giants are one of them that the owner is the guy. It's not an ownership group. I'm not a majority stakeholder. I'm not whatever it is. he's the dude that signs the check. So if he says I want Matt fucking Ryan, they're gonna get Matt fucking Ryan. That's the problem.
The way I see it with AR-15, I'll just end with this, okay? The Colts got Trey Lance without having to move any assets. I mean, and when it comes to the value of the position, you push the button on a guy like that every single time. I mean, you have to. I mean, like, like for instance, Levis got a lot of hate, and I get it. He's an older prospect, and he showed a lot of the same flaws in his game as Anthony Richardson. But like, man, the Titans, I mean, they got really good premium for the position, considering, like, I mean, sure, he's the same age as Malik Willis. Like, it doesn't mean he's not a better quarterback today than that guy. I mean, that's someone who may be a really good value to develop. Sure, you missed out on a fifth-year option because there was so much value in terms of like pass rushers at the back end of the first round that the Philly and Kansas City weren't moving. But I think when it comes to a traitsy quarterback who's shown flashes of being able to do the really hard things and just maybe having a little bit hard time with the simple things, why not just trust your coaching staff to be able to make a diamond out of that? So,
dude, and I'm with you, and obviously, like, at a certain point, now that he's on my team, and I felt like he was going to be on my team for a long time now. He just screamed Ballard to me. I've had to jump on the train. I have no choice. I'm jumping on the train. I see the value in the pick, and I get it. When the other two quarterbacks that have better college tape out there are gone, Andrew put the Will Levis evil in my ear, and I didn't want to hear any of that because I didn't like Levis as a prospect whatsoever. I think that, like you mentioned, like Will Levis kind of had a lot of the same question marks to me, but didn't excite me as much in terms of a ceiling. So it's like, what the heck? Why am I taking why am I taking like the McDonald's to Five Guys, comparison here? Like if to me, if you're gonna fail spectacularly. And Richardson is the pick that I'm more excited about the potential upside, because the floor is low, and that's, I think, the concern for everybody and what they're saying. The floor is low.
I disagree. I don't think the floor is low. I mean, like, okay, so Lamar Jackson picked, 31, 32 in that draft.
It's 32 overall.
When he came in, his passing was bad. He still gets a bunch of flack for his passing, even though he's clearly an improved passer. He just doesn't like passing to the boundaries, right? And he came in, and I think he was averaging 18 points a game during that stretch of his rookie year. And it's like, yeah, he was a pretty bad quarterback, but the rushing upside made that type of difference. Yeah. And Anthony Richardson's a different type of runner, but he can still have that type of impact on the field, man. So you're going to tell me that, like, there's not a chance that, like, he just freezes the DBs enough with his legs to where he gets a nice pop shot to Pittman, who has the speed, and Pierce to take it to the house. Like, again, like, I'm not buying him this year because I just think there's gonna be opportunity to pick him up by other means, like for impatient people, because I think it's gonna take 4 to 6 weeks for Minshew to like get cycled out. He'll have like one, because like he's got that Cutler gene. Like Minshew could win too much. Like he could ball out, honestly. Like we've seen him win with Philly with a good supporting cast. I mean, the Colts have a good offensive line. They have requisite weapons. They have a great running game. So it's like, I don't know. Like, so like they might just opt to get Richardson his reps earlier than I'm thinking. I don't know, but it's definitely someone. Maybe you push the button on your last pick of your draft and you just like you hope for that lottery ticket to cash. But I think the floor is higher than you may think. That's
Jeremy, I agree with you, by the way, and I want to clarify what I meant is his floor in terms of quarterbacking an offense. Now, his floor in terms of fantasy, I had Jalen Hurts his first year. It looked really bad on the field and wasn't always impacting winning, but he had the highest floor, the best floor from a fantasy perspective of almost anybody because, again, the rushing, just the way the scoring is set up. So I agree with you there. I do agree with that. The Colts had a very good offensive line 2 years ago. I'm not so sure that's the truth anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, man, I'm excited about Richardson for what he can really be, because I guess we're sitting here talking about floor to ceiling. His projected ceiling is those guys. I will take one small point of disagreement, though. Lamar had better film coming out than a Richardson.
He had more college success for sure, but he also had
more success at college level.
Actually, I don't know if he had a better surrounding cast. I'm not gonna like
Louisville wasn't exactly world
Louisville.
beaters.
Yeah,
he made that offense go in Louisville,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
I thought Masaj Watson deserved the Heisman that year, but I guess in retrospect, it's a good thing Lamar got it. So.
For the optics.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they knew something.
Masaj Watson. I think the Browns actually had a pretty good draft, and I think there's going to be an interesting comparison between the Giants drafting Jalen Hyatt and them drafting Cedric Tillman right after him.
Yeah,
because I think there's going to be a nice they're very different receivers. They're very
but
different.
production is going to be what people will say. Obviously,
you're
going to look at the stats.
I wish our friend Kyle was here to talk about his.
I guess he's watching some movie. I don't know what he's doing.
The Nasty Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's to put a nice bow on this Anthony Richardson conversation. Pretty much just parroting what you guys saying. He's going to be a better fantasy asset than NFL quarterback year one. We'll see if he can develop. Now, the question is, Jeremy's saying that he's probably not really a draft pick. I think somebody's going to smash the button on him a little earlier. Somebody's going to do it.
Yeah,
just for the upside.
Like a nice preseason game,
Yeah, and
that's
for
all
sure.
it takes. That's all it would
just
take.
takes one. It just takes one or two big plays sticking out in your head, and you'll draft a guy. But is he the highest quarterback of this draft for fantasy?
Interesting.
Or are we looking at Bryce Young? Are we looking at CJ Stroud? And I don't think we're really looking at Will Levis, but
yes,
maybe somebody is.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's my answer.
Richardson for sure.
Richardson is for sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case for
Bryce is close, though, I'd say.
Yeah, because of the surrounding cast, which, if we're going to go into Carolina, I mean, I think this is really good news for Terrence Marshall, truthers. I think it's good news it's just good news for the organization. He's going to be good. And I think
he's there now.
I mean, I think the biggest beneficiary of this is going to be Miles Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
I think Miles Sanders is going to eat this year.
He's going to have a good year, I believe.
I crapped on their offense before, Andrew, but I'm back in. I think they can be sneaky good for fantasy.
Wishy-washy.
Certain areas.
And we're thinking it's pretty much like I'm thinking CJ Stroud is kind of that streamer. He's going to be in streamer range this year. Maybe towards the end of the year, he can have a run, but just based on what he has around him. And
isn't everybody streamable? Come the fantasy playoffs, isn't everybody a streaming option? I mean,
it depends how many injuries there are. Yes.
I mean, Doug, you know how many people almost started Zach Wilson at some point last year?
Oh my gosh.
It's just
Mike White.
It wasn't me.
Mike White was picked up a few times. So that's true. Quarterback is one of those positions, but I'm just saying he's probably not a mainstay on rosters this year.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, that supporting cast is too blah. And I still think Carolina made a huge mistake giving up on DJ. I would have preferred to include another shit. I might have even included another future 2 or 1 instead of giving away DJ. I think that could have helped ramp Bryce faster to the NFL to have a veteran wide receiver that is proven.
It was probably more financial than anything, though. They're kind of resetting their offense, and maybe they just didn't want to put a big commitment on DJ Moore, he's not gonna garner Justin Jefferson money or anything, but he's gonna have a pretty nice contract.
Well, he's already been paid, so that's one. You get some free money in the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
my bad.
No, I mean the thing is he's gonna need to be paid again. I don't know how many years he has left in his contract, but it can't be more than. It can't be any
2 or 3.
Well, I'm saying maybe 2. Because I think he got a 4-year deal when that happened.
Receivers don't get
I think we're
crazy long
down.
contracts.
But the thing is, with DJ, I mean, we get it. He's shown to be talented, but he's never like made that like huge next step the right direction. So I mean, like when it comes to like your like kind of pushing the reset button on your franchise and getting a really talented prospect at quarterback, like it makes sense. Granted, it's like of course in a perfect world, like they move like a future 2 or like a few, like and make it work that way. But it's the number 1 pick. It's literally the opportunity to like create the entire narrative of the draft.
What they've been fighting doing for the last 7 years.
It's like the domino. Honestly, they could have taken Anthony Richardson. I would have been like, damn, all right, shit.
I thought there was a chance of that.
I thought they might, and then I would have taken one of the other 2 quarterbacks to the hizzy.
So, no, for sure.
So in terms of quarterback draft, fantasy impact for the running back position in this draft,
ooh, I got a lot of opinions on that.
Do we even have to really talk about the first one?
Of course.
Is there disagreement?
I think we do need to spend a little time there.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go out and say it. Bijan is going to be awesome. I don't care if he landed in Atlanta. I think they're going to do fine. They're going to run him into the friggin' ground. That's my opinion. Go ahead. Take it away, boys.
I agree. I think that scheme has its limitations. I mean, it's quite concerning that you're going in there with just Desmond Ridder as like your starter. And granted, rookie jitters last year notwithstanding, he was never like, I guess like his upside in theory is Dak Prescott, but he was never the same type of prospect as Dak Prescott. We all know Dak Prescott went in the 3rd round because he had a DUI in college. So it was just like the knucklehead discount, Desmond Ridder does not have the arm strength. He does have some of that, that rushing ability that Daniel Jones liked, if you will, in terms of his skill set, because he doesn't have like plus arm strength and he's not like the most like wiggle runner there is. But I think Bijan will do well. The Kyle Pitts train wreck was pretty rough to witness last year.
Somebody here had first row seats to that.
I mean, yeah, a unicorn of an athletic prospect, literally just getting like 1 fucking target a game, and then when you'd see like a tight end get a touchdown, it wasn't him, and it's just like, what world are we in? Like Thanos must have, what I'm saying, like the Avengers undid the snap like in a weird way, because like this doesn't make sense. The dude is a literal unicorn. Except the horns elsewhere, I hear. No, I was playing. But and then what's his name? The wide receiver out there, Drake London last year. The bridge didn't quite fall down last season, but like it was definitely not like the most impressive rookie campaign, but he did command targets, which is very important. So you have now 2 legitimate receiving threats. You have a top tier talent at the running back position, albeit, Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. I thought Jonathan. Y'all witnessed me get into this argument in the group chat about the Bijan like generational like pick and all that, because like Bijan is an excellent prospect, and I get that he's being called generational because Saquon was being called generational. But in my mind, it's like a nebulous like space where I had Saquon. I had Jonathan Taylor, maybe a little bit lower because he didn't show as much pass catching ability in college. I had Breece Hall right up there with JT, and then I have Bijan right there too. Like maybe a little bit higher, right? But if there was like a gradient involved here, it would be like one stop on a camera or something, like on maybe not the aperture, but maybe the ISO is turned up by 1 or something, or the shutter speed is it's just, I'm trying to create the right metaphor, but there isn't one because we don't know until we see them play. And then Bijan is fully capable of struggling. Now, do I think he should go in the first round of fantasy drafts? Yes. Do I hope he lasts to me at 4? Maybe. But I think he's going to do well. I'm not sure if it'll be the Saquon-esque rookie campaign, but I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that he can have 10 touchdowns and 1,000 rushing yards and 500 receiving yards this year, which is a running back 1.
I think his floor is that he might be a bit of a frustrating volume play, but he's still going to produce as a high-end RB2 at the worst, because I just strongly believe that they're going to give that guy the ball so much.
Yeah.
I really
The
do.
boxes will be stacked, and he will still find a way to make a play for sure.
Yeah. My initial reaction to this pick was really bad. I think for a couple reasons. Number one, from a selfish fantasy bro perspective, that I really wished he would go to a better and more balanced offense later in the draft, because that's what generally happens with running backs, right? They usually go in the bottom like 10 picks of the first round if they're really good, sometimes in the second round. And, I thought if he went to an offense that was ready-made for a running back, I would have been pretty excited in terms of his ability to really attack right away on softer defenses. But that was my initial reaction, was very much booing at the TV. But then as I've had more time to kind of reflect on it, I'm like, at the end of the day, volume is king in fantasy, and they clearly are extremely committed to running the ball. Tyler Algier is a jag. He's got some burst and pop. I don't want to. Maybe that was rude to say. Okay,
I agree with you, Paul.
I don't think that Tyler Algier.
How dare you call him a Jacksonville Jaguar?
And
that's a slur.
Running back. I will say that. I don't think he profiles as a top end running back. I think
Algier is a replacement level running back.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a committee back. Okay, I was a little rude with that phrasing. I apologize to Tyler Algier, who will never hear this. Now, I also just hated on Atlanta for what they've been doing, dude. You haven't addressed quarterback. You haven't addressed the obvious other holes on your team, but yet you continue to draft like generational skill position players that you can't fully leverage or utilize. So
I think they're trying to position themselves for a veteran.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a perfect spot for that. Sure.
He's basically that GM is just basically like 2.0 Gettleman, man. He's annoying. And it was a bad pick for no other reason than you have Jalen Carter sitting right there. I don't care if you have Grady Jarrett and he's a good defensive tackle. Like, you let the Eagles get Jalen Carter. For fuck's sake, man.
Yeah, come
on, dude. That was really upsetting.
Honestly, like, I was like, when they picked Bijan, I was like, because I knew, well, not completely, because they had the 10th pick. They traded up that one spot. But still, I was like,
the Bears.
I just felt it. I was like, the Eagles are going to end up with Jalen Carter.
The Bears are stupid. This is what I was talking about, how like it's like, okay, the Bears like maneuvered out of the first pick just to not even get the number one prospect at any position. Yeah,
exactly.
Like the whole like that is just. I mean, Ryan Poles was almost our GM. I mean, like, he made a really bad move, in my opinion, trading a second round pick for Claypool.
Yeah.
That turned out to be like the Joey Porter pick. Like, I think Joey Porter could help that Bears team right now.
He made a bad move, and he made up for it with grabbing DJ.
With the big trade, right? So right now it's like a hot and cold scenario. It's like, man, like, you drafted like, granted, he could end up being like a franchise like tackle. So, I want to be clear that, like, I don't know, we don't know, again, whatever can happen. But I mean, whatever, maybe Jalen Carter just wasn't a good culture fit, and maybe that wasn't going to be the right environment for him. The unfortunate part is that the environment he went to was like literally like the perfect environment to like bring the best out of a raw talent.
Veteran,
it's just insane. I mean, between Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, like pros who've been there, done that, like have success and are trying to get a championship before their careers come to a close. I mean, that's the type of room you bring a young, talented defensive lineman who's going to look around and be like, these guys are serious. Like, they will punch me in the mouth, but they will also like love me and mentor me and help me grow. And then I got all my boys I went to college with, who I won championships with. All right. It's really frustrating. So, but I mean, did you have any final notes on Bijan? Because I actually have more opinions about the Detroit
Right, and
pick.
so I think we're done on Bijan. To put a bow on everything I'm saying is that
Honey Bijan.
yeah, I really I was excited for the Honey Bijan. I thought it was going to be so sweet, but at the end of the day, the meat is still there. Bijan is still a very talented running back who's going to get volume. Talent plus volume equals fantasy production. It wasn't my perfect scenario for him. But still definitely excited about him as a prospect. I do think our conversation about running backs officially starts now with Jahmyr Gibbs. Jeremy, take it away.
Is that cool with you, Marchese? You're
Yeah,
the
man.
MC.
Yeah, I want to hear your guys' opinion on that. Because I'll just say, yeah, I thought the pick was silly. Talent is good, and they got rid of Swift, also on the Eagles. So it was more odd at the time until they got rid of Swift. But anyways,
Yeah,
what do
so
you think, Jeremy?
that's the thing. Like, so this is a significant move in terms of running back relevance in fantasy because it serves two different teams in a big way. So just to put a bow on the DeAndre Swift thing, DeAndre Swift is talented. He was a first-round prospect. He went in the second round, and it's because he's got a little bit of that Kadarius Toney in him, I think, and which for whatever reason, seems to make him not as much of a culture fit depending on where he goes. Like maybe he's not that team buy-in guy who wants to show up and do the extra reps. He's just always been incredibly talented. That being said, he was also the most efficient player on the Lions when he touched the ball. I mean, he was 5.5 yards per attempt last year, and this was a year where he had some soft tissue injuries. He missed some time, was significant. Also, the Lions, Jamal Williams has vacated his 17 rushing touchdown season and replaced him with David Montgomery, who's had a career of averaging 3.9 yards per carry. And so you see Jahmyr Gibbs coming in, and he's a very similar prospect to Swift. I mean, just slightly different body types, but similar skill set, I would say. And now you have this guy who, I know it's a popular comp, but it's just between body type, play style, and skill set. He's very much in the mold of Jamal Charles, and the most important part of that equation when going into this backfield where it's going to, in theory, be a committee with David Montgomery is draft capital. You don't take a guy top 12 to give him just the DeAndre Swift role. You take him top 12 because you see him as a multifaceted weapon that you want to put the ball in his hands. I mean, he's immediately the fastest person on that team. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a good separator, but he is, in terms of long speed, kind of slow.
Yeah.
So now you have this running back. I mean, they may have formations where they have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs on the field at the same time. So while originally going into this, I was thinking maybe Jahmyr Gibbs would be a risky prospect to draft in fantasy, like at the top end of drafts. Like, I don't mean like top ends, like first 3 rounds. I mean top ends, like kind of like the first 6 rounds where you kind of get your starters. I think he's going to be in that same kind of mold as what's his name, the cat from the Jags.
ETN,
yeah, like he's gonna serve like an ETN-esque role, and he's gonna have an ETN-esque kind of ADP from last season. I could see him being that 3rd to 4th round turn type dude, or a 2nd round pick in leagues like us where we have like keeper eligibility. Not to like show the card, I mean, because you can feel however you want to feel about it, because the fact of the matter is he will be in a committee. But when it's David Montgomery, who's not abundantly efficient and who's likely going to vulture some touchdowns, there was, I think, 23 rushing touchdowns on that team last year.
Yeah,
there's room for both of them to serve a role. And with the receiving ability, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a very nice prospect.
And when you have a high scoring team like Detroit, is panning out to be, then you want all pieces. You want pieces all over the team.
Yeah.
And especially if he's going to be the primary running back. David Montgomery's not exactly been the best at staying healthy either.
No,
So,
exactly.
Well, it makes sense.
I thought that too. And dude, like, it's weird because like I think he's only had one season where he's missed like 3 games.
That's
so that's
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, so I think he's actually relatively healthy, but I know what you mean because he's been like nicked up, and then they'll just like throw his backup in there.
They've had Khalil Herbert like running ahead of him a lot of times, so maybe it's felt like his volume has been so like up and down that it's hard to trust him.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, they brought him there for a reason, but it's a combination of goal line and breather back. But when you see that draft room dapping each other up, literally like they just launched a Falcon Heavy to Mars, like they intend to use that guy.
Oh, absolutely. 12th overall for a running back says everything you need to say. You already said that.
So push the button on him for sure.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take up a bunch of time because I think Jeremy covered a lot of what I was gonna say, but. Yeah, I mean, I think the pick is dumb. I mean, from a football perspective, obviously there has to have been something going on with DeAndre Swift, either not wanting to be there or something going on behind the scenes that we don't know, because from a pure football standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. But if DeAndre Swift was worth a second rounder last year, Jahmyr Gibbs should be worth at least a third rounder this year, in my opinion.
I like that, Paul.
I see at least this role. For him, if not more. So
I think you're right, Paul, and I think
perceived durability.
I think that you're somebody who's gonna be very happy with Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy this year. Now I'm gonna switch it to another player who I'm very frustrated with this team, but I want to get Paul's opinion because I know he is a fan of the incumbent player. How do you feel about the Seahawks and their double dip at running back in the draft? Obviously, Zach Charbonnet being who they picked in the what was it? Was it second or third round? I think it was end of the second round.
It was back of the second.
Back of the second round. So what do you think, Paul?
Similar draft capital as Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, obviously, like they have been a team that has had Rashad Penny for years and basically being asked out every single time that he inevitably gets hurt. So I think this is bet hedging. I think it's playing with house money because they got so many picks from Denver that they feel like they can take some of these picks to shore that position up and still not feel like they're not able to add depth to the rest of their rooms. Yeah. Oh, I mean, am I concerned about it? Of course. Like, somebody with that kind of draft capital is going to take some reps away from Ken Walker and is not just going to spell him. They're going to want to get him some run, but that it doesn't scare me off of Walker for a couple reasons. Reason number one is Walker's shown it. He's already shown it at this level. Yes, it was similar draft capital, Jeremy, but I think that last year's draft was stronger. So I think that even though it was similar draft capital, I think Ken Walker is a better prospect athletically.
I agree.
Than Charbonnet. Whatever. I think he's a stronger athlete than him. So to me, this smells, give me a punch back to Ken Walker, not replacing Ken Walker. That's what it feels like to me. I don't know how you feel about it, Jeremy.
It smells like a time Charbonnet, if you will. Charbonnet. Time Charbonnet.
We got you. We got you.
There's your team name. Draft him in the first.
I mean, honestly, I do agree that Kenneth Walker is a better prospect. But does K9 got that dog in him? I'm just being silly. So I think Charbonnet is not as good of a prospect, but he's definitely slower. He's bigger. So I mean, what can you say? It's a compliment back. This is a team that's been known to deploy multiple backs in a scheme, but still maximize their best players' ability to be efficient. And I think this is what that is. Granted, I think it does knock down, because I thought Kenneth Walker was like back end of the first round type ADP. Now, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me because the thing is, like, if Zach Charbonnet, because Zach Charbonnet is a pretty good running back. So it's like, I think that Kenneth Walker is a better prospect. But we saw Chris Carson, who was just like a run into contact, not try to avoid a single tackle type prospect.
Train wreck kind of player.
He literally had fantasy production with this team and in this scheme. So it's like they love a thumper back. So it's like there could be series. It could be the frustration that like DeAndre Swift owners had last year, where it's like you see the more talented prospect not getting the ball as much because they're feeding the hot hand, which is this thumper that's like running with emotion. So Charbonnet could come in and be like the enforcer in hockey. He's like not there to be the best guy on the field. He's just there to literally get into a fucking fight, you know? And I don't. So it's ultimately like just annoying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can't forget about they drafted Kenny McIntosh too. So it's like, does he become the Eli Mitchell? Where it's like, who's the guy that San Francisco drafted that just never did anything, but he was hired? What was his name?
TDP, Tyrion Davis Price.
That
was last year. Because there was another guy previously. There was the other guy. Man, they churned through running backs.
There's been so many in San Fran.
It doesn't matter.
You're talking about, God dang it. What was his name?
It really doesn't matter. We all know who we're thinking
of. It doesn't matter, but yes, there is some nameless
It's Trey
void. Trey Sermon. Yes, Trey Sermon.
Though, if you're picking somebody in the 7th round, even though technically by name they're running backs, that screams special teamer to me.
Okay. Talk to Isaiah Pacheco about that.
Yeah.
For every Isaiah Pacheco, there's a whole lot of other dudes that don't do that.
Ahmad Bradshaw wants you to give him a call right now.
I think Deuce Vaughn is this year's Isaiah Pacheco, not in terms of impact or like you know, like stash him the whole time, but he does have value being the backup to a guy coming off of an injury. I think what's his name? He ended the season with a broken foot.
Tony Pollard.
Right? Tony Pollard. Did he break his foot?
Something was wrong with him. It was a significant enough injury.
It wasn't a tear, but it was a break. Right. So it's like, you know, sure, the guy is diminutive, but like he was an impact player in college. So
I
don't know.
And I think it's
that's
also
a dart
like
throw for sure.
It's also like, let's look at it this way, just in terms of fantasy of entire season. Everybody has the dream scenario of having at least two, maybe three running backs that can carry you the whole season. But in reality, it looks more like, how can I get 2 or 3 good games at a time during bye weeks, or while unfortunately my RB1 goes down to injury and he's out for 6-7 weeks. Like, we're constantly fighting for this like little bits of production here and there, here and there. Deuce Vaughn can absolutely be that guy. Huh?
Them GMs are handcuffing too.
Yeah, they are. And I can see that Deuce Vaughn, he could have a significant role down the stretch. There are league winners every year that nobody expects to be league winners, you know?
No doubt. But
so we can't forget about these guys, even though they're like 6th, 7th round picks, they may be forced into a role and do pretty well.
I'm with you, Andrew. I'm with you. I honestly, what I've noticed with a lot of times with the NFL draft is sometimes the late drafted guys will often be more skilled football players today. The traits guys go early, right? The dudes that are super fast, super strong, extremely explosive. Maybe they went to a big school, whatever. Like, those guys go early. That doesn't always necessarily mean they're the best football players, right? There are times where a day 2 guy or a day 3 guy will easily supplant them because they just have either more skills, they have a better work ethic, whatever the case may be, right? But I'm with you on that. I'm just saying that your expected production when you take a player, right? Like, hey, I'm looking for a guy that can really finish out a game for me. I'm looking for a guy that when we're up 3 touchdowns, I can protect my people. That's what you expect from that pick. And if it's a home run, it's a home run. But I'll ask you this for the Kenneth Walker conversation. because I think that it doesn't change how I feel about Kenneth Walker, the talent or the running back. It doesn't take him out of to me, it doesn't even take him out of consideration for a potential RB1 if he really pops. I still don't. It just changes kind of where I draft him, right? Like maybe I don't, like Jeremy said, maybe I don't draft him to the back of the first. Maybe it's closer to the second round because I know he's not going to get everything in that offense. But I will ask you, would you rather Kenneth Walker have a season like he had last year where he got everything, exploded, and then seemed to fade out the last 2 weeks of the season? Or would you rather have steady efficiency on lower volume and a healthier player at the end of the year? Because I think most GMs would want the latter.
Yeah, for fantasy, I just want all the production all the time. I'm greedy. So
Yeah, but
other running backs
running
getting in the
backs,
way
it's
pisses
very
me
unlikely
off.
to get that.
Yeah,
You're going to get hurt.
other running backs in the way get on my nerves. But maybe I just come from an archaic time where if I drafted, Jamal Lewis or Sean Alexander, I knew he was getting everything. So I don't know. Maybe I just have to grow up, as my dad would say.
There's not as many.
You've never wanted to do that.
Don't want to.
Every team is seemingly like implementing some form of committee because they still want that juice in the fourth quarter. That's why I'm excited about the Eric Gray draft pick by the Giants because the guy again, like he doesn't have elite top end speed, but like he's a solid player. He's got good wiggle. He's elusive. He runs with some bursts. So it's like, sure. I mean, we need playmakers at every position, right? You need depth everywhere, especially if you're going to try to take the air out of the ball against some of these really dangerous teams like Philly and the Cowboys in the division. And you're also going to need to move the chains against a strong D line in Washington. So I think the next best rookie, not to like move it forward prematurely,
Go
in
for
terms of fantasy impact, is probably going to be what's his name, Roshan Johnson. That the
other
Bears
Texas back.
Yeah, exactly. He's the Miles Sanders to Saquon, where
Yes.
it's a same thing. It's like he backed up the generational guy, so he wasn't able to get his licks in. Obviously, he doesn't have the same high end athleticism in terms of like take it to the house speed, but the guy has like the body type of someone like Damian Pierce, but with like a little bit more juice, like he was more worthy of to be a better prospect, but he still has the body type of the prototypical alpha running back that's going to like run you over, can give you a stiff arm, can move the chains, and when you need 2 yards in a cloud of dust, like he'll get you there. And I it's fair to say that he could be a reasonable improvement over David Montgomery.
I like the Roshan one too. I think he's going to have opportunity, and that's the biggest thing in fantasy. At that position, it's opportunity. So, what about you, Paul?
I agree, and I'll ask about one more because I agree he probably has I'm with Jeremy, has the most obvious path to fantasy production out of the rest of these guys. But I will ask the group here, what do we think about Kendre Miller? And does he have an opportunity in New Orleans to supplant AK, pick up where he left off? Because that suspension is incoming, right? Like, are we still waiting on that suspension?
It's all up in the air. I wouldn't put my eggs in that basket, unless there's some kind of clarity on the situation. I wouldn't be running out to draft Kendre Miller. I think. Wait, am I even getting the name right? What is it?
I think it's Kendre. If I'm looking at the spelling right.
Whatever. Third round running back from I don't know. To be honest, I'm not really into him. So
TCU.
Okay.
He looks reasonably athletic. I'm not saying he's crazy explosive, but he looks like he has some juice. And I'm more asking because of the uncertainty in the situation surrounding.
He might be a late to mid round or mid year pickup. That's really my only analysis and fantasy about him. So what do you think, Jeremy?
I don't really know much about this prospect, but looking at his production from last year, I mean, he's got a nose for the end zone. I mean, 17 touchdowns, so I can understand the appeal. I'm not seeing any combine
Yeah.
information
I
about
don't know if
him.
he participated.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Maybe that's a big reason we don't know much about him
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
I'm
not
I'll give
seeing it
you I'll
either.
give you one who a couple guys who I kind of like, who I think can be steals in a. I don't think they're going to get drafted, but I can see them having
These
production
guys
throughout
to
the
keep
year.
an eye on.
Yeah, Devin. I don't know how to say his last name. A Shane, something like
Oh,
that.
A-Chain? Yeah.
A-Chain, yeah. So he
Yeah.
went to the Dolphins where they love their speedsters, and they got a few
Yeah.
aging speedsters over there.
Yeah. He's young. He's young Mostert.
Right, exactly. So I think that McDaniel will find a way to get him the ball.
Like
Probably
that.
not right
Like
away.
that.
I think, it'll take some time for him to have any value. Maybe not even this year. We'll see. But I like his ability. Any kind of home run threat is always nice to have. And then I also I think he might have more opportunity than we realize right now is Chase Brown, who went to the Bengals. Because that Joe Mixon situation is a little shaky right now,
Safety as
too.
well. Yeah.
And they got rid of maybe not get rid of, but whatever. They didn't re-sign Samaje Perine. He went, God, what team did he go to? What? I don't remember now. I'm totally blanking what team he went to, but he's not on the Bengals anymore. So there's opportunity
what
there.
about Chris Evans, bro?
I think he'll always be a third down back. I don't
Captain
think
America.
I honestly think Chris Evans is a better prospect than that. So we'll see. I don't know enough about the new rookie. I just know Chris Evans is he's not small.
Yeah.
And he's not slow. And
That's
but yet
right.
he was beat out by
Samaje Perine.
Samaje Perine,
By
who
Mixon.
flamed out.
Well,
Who flamed out in Washington, but when you see Samaje Perine run for the Bengals, man, he was
that kind of woke him up. Like,
He
damn, I
was an
better
animal.
play. I better get my shit on track, or else I'm gonna be out of this league.
Should we
where did he
move on to
go?
receivers?
Dude, I forget. We gotta look this up. Hold on, give me 1 second. Yes, we should, Paul. Go ahead. That's a hard one.
That is
Because
that's a tougher conversation.
with it being as clustered as it was,
Wow, he went to the Broncos.
the
What a
Broncos.
mess.
Okay, the Broncos.
Man,
R.I.P.
that is not good for
Javonte Williams, we miss you so much.
for Javonte Williams. Yeah, because honestly, that's like a guy who will do well while your knee is recovering, and then you come back and you're in a full committee. Man, because they signed someone else too. Then they signed Boone, and they traded for
they signed somebody. I think it was Boone.
and they traded for the Dolphin running back too.
Chase Edmonds.
Chase Edmonds, yeah. So I mean, what a mess.
That's who it was. I don't think it's anybody.
Denver backfield is weird right now.
Nobody that's going to threaten a healthy.
Williams, yeah. Williams is the guy when he's healthy.
I mean, you say that, but he tore everything in his knee, bro. It's just I don't know.
Not a
that guy
given.
may
Oh,
never
no,
be
I'm
the
not
same.
touching him this year.
It's not a given that he comes back and he's even close to the same. Unfortunately,
you shouldn't touch people without their permission, Paul. Oh, you already learned this lesson.
How many times do you have to tell you this?
Yeah, come on, dog.
But yeah, so wide receivers, man, with them going with the back to back, as the Giants fans are very aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with Deontay Banks, but I think there was a lot of us that were hoping one of those receivers dropped. But
who's your favorite in terms of who can give you? I know receivers don't generally produce a crazy amount in their rookie year outside of like the true awesome outliers.
I think that's starting to change.
Like Justin. Yeah, it could be starting to change now, but
yeah.
But like obviously like fit and getting on a team and getting rapport with a quarterback right away and having the opportunity to start out. Who do you feel like should go highest in drafts based on
Addison.
what you know right now?
Yeah. I agree. Even though he was the lowest of the top 4 to get picked, I think so.
Because I think targets.
Yeah.
Like best separator, best hands. Like he doesn't have like the top end speed, like from combine perspective, but he's got requisite speed. He's like He's like less explosive Devontae Smith. Like he's
Yeah.
gonna be a good pro.
He
I
does
think
play
so.
with a target vacuum.
And
Yeah.
yes, but we still saw Adam Thielen was productive. The thing about Adam Thielen that made him productive was all the touchdowns, though,
Yeah.
which is never a guarantee. So, yeah, Addison, assuming he's the number 2 from week 1, I think he'll be the most consistent of those guys. But then you've got Zay Flowers who can just always – he can break a big play at any moment.
That was actually going to be my choice.
Yeah, I think Quentin Johnston's he's kind of in a bit of a funnel right now where he has to wait for one of those inevitable Chargers injuries. And then JSN, well, you got
Crowded
2
room.
prime receivers as well that are going to get a lot of targets. So I just think the targets for those other 2 guys aren't going to be there the same way they're going to be there for Zay Flowers and for Addison. And then if I can throw in a couple more names, Jonathan Mingo went higher than a lot of people thought, and he's probably going to play right away with Bryce Young on the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
And then does Patrick Mahomes finally have a wide receiver, not just a pass catcher? We know that Kelsey's the man there, but in Rashee Rice, is he going to be their top wide receiver?
He is going to be the next in a long line of Kansas City wide receivers that we overdraft because we want them to do so well, and Patrick Mahomes laughs at all of our stupid dreams.
But maybe
He'll continue to
that
that.
could change, though. That could change where, yes, Kelsey will always be the dude until he retires. But it's not like he's the only guy, even though it does feel this way. He's not the only guy that gets targets on Kansas City.
Yeah.
Him and
they
Jarek
just-
McKinnon now, I guess.
Are y'all talking about Rashid Rice?
Yeah.
Rashee Rice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think
So,
those
yeah.
guys come into the conversation with the
101 vacated targets
for
from
Rashee
Juju
Rice.
Smith-Schuster. Yeah. I mean, like, and it's like they already have like interesting players there with Sky Moore previously. Sorry, I didn't mean I like had to black out for a second there because I got like a time sensitive work text, like you know how it is. But it's like
You got KT, of course.
like it's like you got KT and Sky Moore theoretically underneath, even though I think Sky Moore has some like good chops downfield, but Rashid Rice is kind of slow. Like, you know, like it's a little, I don't know. It's like, so maybe just that chain mover, like type dude. Like, I don't know. I have to see it first.
He'll be faster than Juju was last year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Juju like can separate though. Like Juju's crafty, you know?
And so that's
he's not a number 1, but we've seen KC be able to do it with just nothing but number 2s and 3s because of Kelsey.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that like Juju is the vacated targets, and that's what I'm concerned about with. Which I'll take a shot on anybody in Kansas City because I want a piece of that offense. I'm going to do it, but
piece of that ass.
But in terms of like, okay,
I want that Mahomes booty.
Juju is who he could theoretically be replacing, and Juju was.
He wants all the catch up.
Of a borderline starter, like in fantasy, and pretty inconsistent. So that's my concern there. Last couple things, like yes, Zay Flowers would have been my choice for like my favorite receiver right now. I don't think very much of Rashad Bateman. In
How
terms
dare
of
you?
in terms
How
of
dare you?
receiver,
I'm a fantastic prospect.
Oh, no, you're not. Shut up.
And and so I just liked Zay Flowers. I liked what I saw of him, and so I just feel like that's a good fit for a team that is starved with receiving threats, and Lamar feeling pretty motivated coming out of a very weird summer for him. And then the last thing is Quentin Johnston. I don't think he provides a lot of value right away, but God, I really hope LA finally found the big traitsy receiver that they've been looking for, basically to backfill Mike Williams for the last.
He's interesting
like,
because I wonder what the Chargers see his role as. Is he just like okay, when Mike Williams' body just finally absolutely just implodes on itself, then do we have Quentin Johnston, or are we looking for him to be the number 3, and where are we playing him, or is he going to be a rotational guy to start? It's just very interesting.
I think he's going to be rotational to start, but yeah, I think he's the spiritual successor to Mike Williams, in my opinion.
But they just gave him a big contract, though.
They don't have the same game. I honestly, I didn't think it was a good fit. I think if they had drafted Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison, that would have been a way better fit, personally.
I thought they were going to draft Zay Flowers when they came up. That's really what I thought.
It's
I thought Quentin Johnston would have been. I think they would have flip-flopped.
And I like Quentin Johnston because he's like very athletic, and so like you can coach a lot of like stuff into his game, into his route tree to make him like a better player. But I think the part that I really couldn't get with was like just how much of a body catcher he is, and it's like that's a really hard like habit to break from. You know, it's like you have this like big dude who like needs to turn around and like see the ball to like get it into his chest, whereas like it's like Devontae Adams is not as big, he's not as fast, but like he separates, and then he like you ever seen him like NFL films, like him like talking about like some of the craft, where like he'll be talking to another wide receiver, he's like, man, I had really good late hands on that.
Yes.
He's very detail oriented.
And then it'll go, and it'll be like, so what you do is like you see the ball, it's there, but you don't lift your hands. You wait until it's literally right on you, and then you bring your hands up to snatch it. This way the DB can't make a play on the ball. Right. And it's like these little details that like you can work into your game, but like if your instinct is to all times like just have to have the ball get to your chest, right. Like I just feel like it's like Devin White energy, which is like kind of spooky, honestly. So I liked him. Like athletically, but we'll see. He has a lot of room to develop, and it's like, is now the time to take a developmental guy with an aging, Keenan Allen, or you immediately get Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and like you have a playmaker like immediately.
No,
who can separate and has craft.
Remember how I said I hope they found their guy? I hope he turns into something, because they hate Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer is not who they thought he was.
He's fine. He's another big guy too. That's what I'm saying. It's just a weird player personnel decision, to be honest. Like
I was very confused. That pick kind of threw me off a little bit, and it also threw me off that I'm like, damn, 2 receivers in a row, and then it was all of them.
Yeah, it was the run. I mean, I like Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. Those are probably my favorites. Jackson Smith-Njigba is good. He seems like limited athletically, respectively. But again, it's like the craft that matters. So that's a good fit in Seattle.
Is he ever not going to be in a crowded receiver room? My gosh, this guy is like the complimentary receiver, like on steroids.
Tyler Lockett's not going to play forever. He's getting up there.
Lockett's on a 1-year deal.
That hairline gets worse and worse every year. So we'll see what happens with Lockett. By the time he's actually like just doesn't have one, then he'll retire.
Is he married yet?
Who?
Tyler Lockett?
I have no idea.
No,
I don't have him on Twitter.
Because I don't know, man. Like imagine how much. No, this is going to get weird. Whatever.
All right, so I'm going to make you guys. I'm going to make you guys talk about
spinning for Jeremy.
Yeah,
I'm going to make you guys talk about tight end.
Do I need to go down this path? And then the non-gremlin part of his brain was like, no, stay on course. Stay on course.
I'm going to make you guys talk about tight end now. I know how much you hate it.
Oh no.
Okay, really 2 questions. If you were forced to start a tight end, would you rather have Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer?
Michael Mayer because of opportunity, but to all of it.
Okay. How about you, Jeremy? He doesn't know.
Mayer went to the Raiders, right?
Raiders, yeah. Kincaid went to the Bills.
Yeah. No, that's the answer for sure.
Mayer.
I mean, there's a ton of like they like to. Well, actually,
Jimmy G likes to hit his tight ends.
No more Waller.
Yeah,
I
obviously
know
Waller's
no
not
more
there.
Waller, but the guy behind him wasn't bad
It
either.
was like Moreau
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Foster's
yeah,
home.
no, Mayor's
Foster
right.
Moreau.
Mayor's right because Mayor, like, it's tough, dude. Because like tight end takes like 3 years to develop.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they're
That's-
a hard position. Like you might as well not even look at the rookies until they
I'm not.
do
Yeah,
something.
no. My advice is always pay the fucking premium for like the best one.
Yeah.
You know, get Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, and Waller. Oh my gosh, have I fallen on that Waller sword every year? Like I never draft him.
Jumped on
I never
it.
draft him.
I jumped
never
on it.
draft him.
Dove on top
But I
of the
always
wall.
talk about how like he's like the steal of the draft, and then it hasn't panned out. So I really hope it works out with the Giants, man. Like this year,
Yeah, we
because
need it too.
the guy is so talented. Like and it's great. He's a pumped up wide receiver.
And talk
that-
about a guy with some
that
freaking great
converted.
hands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's awesome. If he stays healthy and
his wife is gorgeous.
stays healthy up here, because I think
W-
that's part of it
WNBA
too.
player.
I think he's gonna help elevate that offense.
Well, he definitely will.
But not
So-
over Philly and Dallas.
So is there anybody, so like kind of to close this out, talking about the draft, is there anybody who you feel might be that we haven't talked about yet that could be a surprise contributor early on?
Tajay Spears,
Tajay Spears, running back.
Tell
What
us
team did
about
he
it.
go to? I forget.
Titans.
Titans. Okay. Yep.
Derrick Henry is entering his year 30 season.
Yeah, he's not young man anymore.
He's one of the most is that correct? Am I lying?
I think you're right because I remember looking at him
Derrick
and
Henry's
just
about to be 30.
kind
Is
of
that what you
dismissing
said?
him because it was like, oh, Derrick Henry's there.
Because Henry is amazing, obviously. Like he's an absolute freak. Yeah, so he's 29 right now, so he's entering his 29 to 30 year season. He's one of the most I mean, people can say like, oh yeah, he was lightly used in those first 2 seasons, whatever. The volume in the recent years, like, and I mean, it's shown. I mean, it's foot injury. A Liz Frank injury is no joke. I mean, that used to end NBA players' careers, right? So, I mean, he could be a surprise contributor. Maybe they try to get him the ball a little bit more, change of pace. He's the most talented backup they've had since Dante Foreman, and Dante Foreman, like most talented backup. But Dante Foreman was coming off an Achilles injury, so he couldn't really hit his stride till he went to Carolina. So Tajay Spears would probably be that guy. And then I mentioned it earlier, but I think Jalen Hyatt could be a contributor. I think he could surprise people in terms of his ability to contribute. And I know you were talking up Zay Flowers. I wouldn't draft him this year.
Quick
I don't
question,
think he's
though.
a lottery ticket because
I
of the
meant to
system
ask.
he's in.
I meant to ask this when we were talking about Zay Flowers. Does he? I doubt it, but do we think he goes in a fantasy draft higher than Odell, or you think Odell's going to go higher?
I mean, that's another reason why I don't really want to mess with him. He's a rookie. He's really good. He's got the most juice on that team right now with Bateman coming off of an injury. And it's like Bateman may not fit that locker room. Like, because honestly, I think Bateman's a fantastic prospect. I think like if you're a GM, you need to be on the phone and trying to get him because it doesn't seem they really love him,
Yeah.
But I think with OBJ oft injured, but like the offense being a run first offense, and then the passing being funneled through Mark Andrews, that Zay Flowers is a big stay away from me. But I honestly, like, I know I touched on it earlier. I think Jordan Addison is draftable, very much draftable.
Yeah.
Like, because the vacated targets from Adam Thielen. It's a relatively pass happy offense. Their defense is going to be garbage. And it's like he's like a polished prospect. Playing across one of the biggest target vacuums and like gets most defensive attention
too,
in the league.
I like that as well.
So I think he is like that, that rookie that you
a
push
good
the button
a good
on
route runner
in
forced to
the
have
late round.
one-on-one coverage on every play is never a bad bet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
what do you think, Paul? Who's a surprise contributor that maybe we're not talking about?
I'm not gonna like. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm a true football sicko that I'm paying attention to day 3 and on picks for true surprises.
We got one of those too. Go ahead.
I'm a sicko in other regards, as you know. But if I'm going to dip my toe into the world of tight ends, which I'm going to have to in certain leagues, as much as I just crapped on it, I don't think Michael Mayer, even being a rookie, is a bad bet. I think I think he already has the pass catching chops. I think that McDaniels really wants to use tight ends in that offense, and a fairly decent route tree for being as young as he is. I think the surprising part, obviously he's not a surprise. He was picked early. He had a first-round grade. I know that's not a traditional surprise pick, but I think people would be surprised if a rookie tight end is fantasy viable in his first year. I would struggle to put 12 other tight ends in front of him personally.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I think just talking about tight end for a second, a guy I like the whole process, probably a big reason why I like the Steelers draft too, is they got Darnell Washington from Georgia, who I like. He's a huge guy. He's kind of a hybrid between the tight end and a 6th O-line guy. I think he'll have Freiermuth's going to be there, but he'll be touchdown dependent
for the real football,
almost every other
the real football guys.
Yeah. But I will say I have one, and Jeremy might have a little bit of insight on him. Maybe he did some research on him since he went to the geographical location team of Jeremy. And I liked him too, but he was injured a lot in college. Is Michael Wilson.
Yeah, dude,
I think there's going to be an opportunity
one of the guys
for him.
I had. Yeah, he's really good. He's just been oft injured.
Yeah, he's been injured a lot, and I think he's going to have some opportunity in Arizona.
For a big guy, dude, he's got some craft to his game. Like he's talented.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with, does the trade? It seems like it will happen at some point of Hopkins. Hopkins does have to be dealt for this to really come to any kind of fruition.
I mean,
but
even so, I mean, because I like him as a prospect. I don't think he's going to be like a contributor this year, though. That's not like a dart throw for me. I just think he's a prospect to keep an eye on if there are injuries, because he may see the field in certain packages. Because it's probably going to be because again, you have
Rondale
Moore. I'm over here as if he's shorter than me. We're the same size.
He's tiny little guy.
So Rondale Moore, Hollywood Brown, and then Greg Dortch signed a deal. So it's there's going to be certain sets where he's going to get a look. And then they have a good tight end too. His name is slipping my mind. But he made an impact as a rookie
towards the end of last year.
Yeah,
and I'm forgetting his name too, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
I think Michael Wilson is a developmental guy. You know who's, and again, this is totally being a homer, bro. There's this guy that we picked up, priority free agent, is Bryce Ford Wheaton, bro. If you haven't seen his tape, he ran a 4.38. He's 6'3", and he's 220 pounds. And you look at his tape.
He's a tight end
at West Virginia. No, dude, he's a wide receiver. And
oh my God.
you look at his tape at West Virginia, and he's running tight routes. He looks pretty good, So I don't know, man. You just never know how these are gonna work out. He could have called somebody, something at an interview. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why he wasn't drafted if he's this athletically gifted, or maybe he just didn't have eyes on him because he didn't have a good quarterback to play with, whatever. But that's a sleeper that I'm going to keep an eye on, because our receiver room, a lot of them are on 1-year deals. There's going to be attrition from injury, so that's an interesting prospect from a retooling perspective, because we do have a history of impactful undrafted players at our team. So let's see. I don't know if Bryce Ford Wheaton knows how to salsa, but
that guy's name you're searching for is Trey McBride.
Trey McBride, yep. Yeah. I want to say McBride, but I don't want to be too out of pocket, because I'm sure I've made some mistakes in terms of what I said. But
it's okay. We all make mistakes.
Yes, Paul especially.
All the time, always, forever. his whole life. So I guess how do we want to close this out? I feel like we talked about most of the fantasy.
I just want to say
position groups.
enjoy the Madden season now that the draft is over, and download those rosters when they come out, and take the Browns to the Super Bowl, because that's the only way they win it is in Madden.
Well, I drank my coffee, so I'm about to take the Browns to the Super Bowl.